A detective is in custody. A body was found in his living room. Detective Patrick Boone is about to be interviewed by the police. I'm Billy Jackson. After 26 years in law enforcement, this is Jackson's Case Files, where experience meets fiction. As Rhea Voss prepares for the interview with Detective Boone, she is sitting in evidence receiving, looking at photos of the crime scene. She asks herself, what did I miss? Every once in a while, a picture would show up, showing her something that she did overlook, giving her a piece of a never-ending puzzle. It's not unusual for the department to ask Rhea to come back and help them with special cases. One, she was a detective with the department, and two, her skills as a private investigator are unmatched. Lieutenant Sarah Williams walks into the room looking at her watch. She asks Rhea, have you been here since you've come back from the crime scene last night? Now, Rhea didn't respond. Instead, she picked up two pieces of paper. One was a photograph of Boone's weapon. She says, there are 3 rounds missing from the magazine. The other is a piece of paper from the ME's office. And she says, the medical examiner says the victim was shot 2 times. Sarah says, so where's the other bullet? Now, Rhea is not ready to give all the information she's thinking about this case right now, so she changes the subject by saying, let's table that for later. Right now, where are we with this interview with Boone? Sarah laughs a little bit and says, we're ready, but Boone will only talk to you. Boone is in the interview room. He's tired. He's unshaved. Rhea enters the room, closes the door, and she has a folder in her hand. Now, before she sits down, she lays out selected photos from the crime scene in front of Boone. She holds one piece of paper in her hand as she sits down. She just has to see Boone's face when she lays this document in front of him. She lays the paper down. Boone automatically looks at the line that says cause of death. When Boone reads gunshot to the forehead, his face changes. He frowns at Rhea and he says, I didn't do this. Rhea says, you said that already. Tell me what happened. Boone says, I don't remember. Rhea says, so how do you know you didn't do it? Boone doesn't like this line of questioning. It starts to frustrate him. But before he gets angry, he remembers why he requested Rhea to ask him. So he takes a breath and he says, listen, Voss, I know you don't like me. In fact, I know the reason why you don't like me. But I know that you're going to do the right thing on this investigation. And I can't say that about everybody else in this department. Rhea didn't really know what he meant by that statement, but she stayed focused in asking him questions about what happened. So she said, I tell you what, why don't you just walk me through what happened yesterday, all the way up to the point where you lost your memory? He tells Rhea about how he had a drink or two at a bar on Clay Street. Then he said after the bar closed, he drove down to the corner gas station and bought a 6-pack of beer. He then drove home, pulled into his driveway. He says the last thing he remembers was walking to his front door. Rhea stared at him for a second and then began to take some notes. Rhea liked to have silence take the room over. Most suspects don't like silence and they start talking about other things. Boone was no different. He started to say, before I blacked out, I heard movement in my house. Rhea took some notes and then she said, okay, so when you woke up, the report says you saw a body. He said, yes, and I saw my gun. Rhea said, why did you pick it up? He said, Voss, that's the one thing they teach us when we go to police academy. We have to check our weapons. When we take them off, we got to make sure they're empty. When we put them on, we got to make sure they're full. She said, well, then why did you run? He thought about it for a second, and he knew that the reason why he asked her to interview him was because he was ready to confess. He's arrested. All his sins are ready to be buried. So he looks at her and says, Boss, I'm not a good guy. You know I'm not a good guy, and this is why I asked you to come talk to me. He looked up and saw the cameras and knew he was being recorded, so he continued his confession. You of all people in this department know I'm a bad guy because I tried to kill you. Rhea's eyes cringed as she looked at him continue. He said, I got away with it and I continued my job, but you couldn't prove it, and that's how you lost your job. and now I'm here laying it all on the table. Rhea asked him, "Why are you telling me this now?" Boone says, "Because I'm a bad guy. I do sell drugs. I do launder money. With these hands, I've hurt people and put them in the hospital. And yes, there's death on these hands, but it's been in the name of the department, which is why I've never been convicted. But I'm ready to take all of those charges for everything and go to jail on what I've done. But I'm here to tell you that I have not killed any preacher, and I don't even know who that was in my living room." Rhea stands up because it's her way of calming herself, and she felt better looking down on Boone when she asked him, "How am I supposed to believe you?" Boone says, "I don't care if you believe me or not, but I know what kind of person you are. You're going to find the truth one way or another, and that's what I need. I need everybody to know the truth." Rhea runs out of the interview room and goes back to the evidence office. She picks up the phone and makes 2 phone calls. The first call she made was a request to get the video from the gas station to corroborate Boone's story. Then she calls a sergeant and asks him to get a patrolman to go out to the gas station, drive from the gas station to Boone's home to figure out a timeline. Then she hangs up the phone. She continues to look at the evidence and she says, "I'm going to need a little help with this one." So she gets in a car and she drives to find her friend, Leon Briggs, aka Bubba, a U.S. Army veteran. Bubba had an injury while he was doing his time in the service. It required painkillers. Bubba got addicted to those painkillers, and through the years it cost him his family, his home, and now he lives on the streets. Now, just recently, Bubba's overcome his addiction, but he still lives on the streets. He's been Rhea's voice on the street and his source of information. Bubba has a motto. He says the city runs on a rhythm. Crime disturbs that rhythm, and he's got that type of ear for that kind of music. Bubba's sitting on a bench in front of a boarded up church. He feels Rhea walking up behind him and says, "You're late." Rhea says, "You don't even have a watch." Bubba says, "Don't need one. Garbage truck just passed by. The metro bus is running a little bit behind. And I take it you're late because you bought us some coffee." Rhea smiled, sat down, and gave him his cup. And then he said, 3 ministers murdered in the span of 6 months. None of us living under the bridge think that's a random thing. Rhea said, "I need your help, Bubba." He said, "What do you need?" She said, "I got a victim, and I can't wait for DNA to come back to find out who he is. I need to know who he is now." Bubba said, "That's easy. That's Nathaniel Walker. He's a deacon at one of the churches on 16th. Word is, he's been questioning these churches that where the pastors preach about their finances, donations, and offerings, and some other things." Rhea said, "What other things?" "I'm trying to find that out," Bubba says. Rhea asked, "Is there anything else you got for me, Bubba?" Bubba said, "Yeah. I don't know why he was found in the home of that detective you all arrested, but I do know that he had a working relationship with one of the pastors. They knew each other very well." Rhea said, "Okay, thank you," and she took the notes down. They talked for a minute, and then Rhea gets back in her car and heads back to the station. When she gets at the station, all the information she requested is back. She calls in Lieutenant Williams to sit with her while they watch the video from the gas station. Then they look at the report from the officer who drove from the gas station to Boone's house to measure the timeline. Everything that came back verifies Boone's statement. He was not with the victim at the time of death. Sarah throws up her hands and says, "What do we do now?" Rhea says, "We still got a killer to catch. Let's go back and look at the evidence." As Rhea's sitting there looking at the evidence, she looks at the information on her notes about this Nathaniel Williams, and she tries to question, what was he doing? What got him killed? What was Nathaniel Walker doing that cost him his life? What was the nature of his working relationship with one of the pastors? And the biggest question is, what do all 3 pastors have that connect them with the killer? Join us next episode when Rhea, Sarah, and Bubba dive a little bit deeper and we find out exactly what's the relationship between these pastors, Nathaniel Walker, and our killer. This is Jackson's Case Files, where experience meets fiction.